Guys, I am with Pastor K. Welcome to the second segment of this conversation. We're talking about Rerooted, but not ruins. Now, Pastor K, we're talking about your bipolar situation and also how you've been handling that. Maybe you can just give us a bit of an insight, and as well as now when you were in that phase of now the part of the church, right? And how you've been really trying, and maybe just give us a glimpse in terms of how are you like managing all of this, like in that stage of now your quality of life has gone down. I'm sure. And also tell us in terms of family dynamics, how you handle family dynamics, how your children felt in that whole stage, and then obviously your health.
Yeah, I think the health situation that we talk about, I think now given the fact that, people are very much open about mental health and so on, that is something that I've lived with for about 40 years, particularly this year. In 1985, when I just finished my first year at university, Sussex University, I then was diagnosed at that time with what they call a manic depression, which is actually what bipolar is, not knowing what it was. Not that it had affected my life then as I was studying. Luckily, it was just during breaks or during the first year break after the first year that, I found myself being in a very manic, stage, reading a lot, talkative, very hyper and all that. And subsequently ended up seeing a doctor. My friends that I was studying with, also Namibians at the time, people like Hili Fambako, Dave Nuyoma, and then also my scholarship providers, Africa Educational Trust, which was run or managed by my second mom, Jane Shituwete. She was then called Jane Pruitt at the time, facilitated for me to see a medical doctor, and then I was subsequently diagnosed with bipolar. The term that was used at the time is that, I had a nervous breakdown, which I didn't really understand. It was also, that was a shock to me, talking about crises that you go through, because I didn't see anything wrong. It's not something you plan for. I had my life planned out. I'm going to finish I did my college, which was A-levels or IB diploma when I was 20, finished. I had planned that by the time I'm 23, I would have done with my first degree, and then by the time I'm 25, I would have done my MA, and then, the way I've planned it, that probably by the time I'm 28, 29, I'll be doctor. And then this happened. So I ended up being hospitalized in the UK, we call it being a prisoner of the Queen at the time, for about 2 months, 2 to 3 months really, and I ended up coming home, took a break. Luckily, the university was very understanding. They gave me, I can't remember the term that they used, but I was given time off to come back again and so on. So came home, 2 weeks at home, managed to get a job in the bank those years, Barclays Bank it used to be called, which now became FNB later. I worked for a year, and then after a year I went back to school and started over again. So that was again perhaps in my early part, before I even got into corporate world. That is really what has happened. And I think to a large extent that also set the trajectory of my life, because so many things happened that were determined by that particular incident and that condition that I actually subsequently ended up living with. So when you introduced it, you say you're bipolar. Funny enough, there was a time I was so conscious about it, and people that knew about it, and I thought I'm being very open about it. So particularly to those that were close, I would be talking, and it was always kind of easy to hide behind it, and you say, you know my sickness. This is my sickness. But then later on I realized, I said, no, this is not my sickness. I'm not going to own it and no, it's just a condition and so on. Which meant that for years I've been actually for 40 years I've been taking medication to just regulate chemical balance in the brain, because that's what it is ultimately. But I really think that the most important aspect of life that perhaps even ties in now with later on in terms of the experiences of life is the fact that that has not been, it's been perhaps a setback, but in so many ways a setup as well, maybe to use the cliche word to say it has become a setup for my life purpose as well. So also the fact that even having had that in a time that people didn't really know about it, especially in our part of the world, or it wasn't something that was discussed, I must say that the one thing that I can look back at is that even with a condition like that, I've been able to live life productively and to raise 4 grown children very well and live a married life for just under. I was diagnosed in 1985. I met my wife in 1986. I've been married at 34 years. So she's been with me even prior to us getting married, and also when we got married, knowing that I have this, not even having understood it very well at the time. But I remember that when we got married, and some of the family members would say, "Oh, this guy, there's this thing, a condition." My wife was very, even funny enough, we were just talking as before I came here, we come from a wedding engagement that we were attending this afternoon, and we were talking about this thing, and she said something so awesome, and she said, I don't know what we were talking about in particular, but then she said, "My dear, you know that I am committed to you." And then she said, "You remember, even before we got married, I told you, and I still remain committed." Oh, that really touched my heart.
I love you and your wife, Pastor K.
And God bless her soul. She's a beautiful, I think she's the epitome of a good wife. And I think, again, that then speaks of how can you navigate life with a health condition that is so stigmatized. Is that I had such good support and somebody that believed in me, despite or irrespective of what I had to go through. So I think that is then something that is very important. I've only taken this decision about in my 38th year of living with bipolar. Then I started to talk about it publicly.
38th year only?
Yeah.
Wow.
Of course, because of the
stigma, lack of understanding.
Lack of understanding. And also just that the fact that to the one extent I just felt that it was so private. It's a sensitive issue.
Yes,
it's not understood, it's not known. But I also, for many years, I felt that I don't have to
emphasize it.
Now I think the world has become much more open, much more receptive, and also much more aware of the realities of the various dynamics of mental health conditions. So I have worked in the corporate world, in management, executive, and even with this. And many a times, if I don't tell you, you wouldn't even know.
I mean, I did not know. When you actually said it the first time, I was like, what? Are you sure? Because yet again, and it's not like you don't have the information, or I don't have the information about it. I just think, like you said, if I don't tell you, you will never know. Now let's talk about your family dynamics now in that first situation. Now, when you became a pastor, how did your family take it that, you know what, Papa? Our lives now have changed completely. We are no longer used to the same things or life that we are. And how did your wife take it in that first season?
It's very interesting. I guess maybe just the way that I presented the issue is not that it's just something that came upon us. Of course, I've functioned in the church as an elder. I was a deacon, and then I became an elder, and I served in so many different divisions while I was still working in my corporate world, and my bishop would always then say, "Hey, you have a pastoral heart, And and I used to travel a lot with my work. Having worked for the national airline at the time, I was national sales manager. I had so many various portfolios in the commercial sector: marketing, customer service, sales, and all that. And but I've never really thought, or neither desired or had ambition to be a pastor, but I loved to serve. And I think that is what really has then driven this whole motivation that, you have a pastoral heart. Something that I think is natural to me is serving people, and I have a sensitivity towards, I guess my gift is serving, you can say that. And I think it was then in that context that there was so much push that, no, you need to just, this your job is too much keeping you away. And I think given also just the culture within the church denomination where I was, where Pentecostal charismatic church, or rather more Pentecostal holiness type of church, the concept of obedience and submission is very much highlighted. And I think you are in that kind of environment that I think maybe now when I'm looking back, I think sometimes clouds your judgment to take ownership, even to just. Although I've, of course, for many times I've battled with my pastor and said that no, this is not really for me. I've always seen myself as a business person, serving in church, but also supporting the work of the ministry. So ultimately, I then became assistant pastor, and then I was then resigning from my work so that I can become a full-time assistant pastor at the church where I was. And there, again, out stuff that you didn't plan for happened. And very interestingly, the day before I was to submit my resignation, or my resignation notice, because I needed to give about 3 months notice being in management, the Sunday before, I remember Monday the 15th, I was going to submit my resignation. We literally got kicked out of church.
Oh my goodness!
With my children. That's a story for another day.
Oh my gosh!
A story for another day, perhaps. Or maybe it's a story for the journey of life.
Yes.
And, my kids grew up in church. Yes. My son, Sean, who's now a singer, grew up worshiping in church. That's what he loved to do. My first daughter, she was an usher in church. Okay, the other two were still small. My wife was jointly also an elder in the church. So for the dynamics that led to that were just as shocking to us.
Sure.
But then it's also indicative of the kind of environment in which one navigated or functioned. Because, how can you be kicked out unless you've really committed? I don't know whether
really the most.
Is there something like, even so in church there's a process that we go through as Christians. The Bible says if there be any disagreement, speak about it with one another, and if there's no agreement, get a witness and still address it, and if not, still bring it before the congregation, and then only. So that was also, I guess, just some of the unfortunate cultures and dynamics in church that then led to my entire family being really excommunicated out of the church in which we were. Very interestingly, though, I remember when we got home, it's like there was this because even the culture that we have in church every day, Monday, Tuesday, Sunday, and because I love to serve, even though I was in that position, I would be driving the church bus to drop people. I'll be picking up the cleaners on Saturday to come and clean the church, in as much as I was doing other stuff as well. So that, if I can come back to the theme, I think that then again, it's something you never planned for. You had an idea that, okay, I'm now going to submit, leave my job, secular work, and then serve God under. And then all of a sudden, that is taken away from you. And in that moment of overwhelming challenge, emotions, I still went ahead. So, and that then put me in a completely different trajectory.
Now imagine, guys, all of this happens. Let's talk about the next phase in his life in the next section.